process to be in sync. Because I think both we and our European partners believe it would be most effective if we're able to take a common sort of approach. But there have been differences in emphasis, clearly. And our European partners have views that are sometimes different from ours on the way to proceed. All the pressure until recently was the European Union expressed its belief to us, the member states, that we had not engaged seriously enough on this peace process. So there was some feeling that we needed to do more. I think after the re-election of the president and John Kerry's named a nomination secretary of state position, you see us become much more engaged. We're doing a new press on trying to deal with the peace process, trying to make progress. And I think our European allies are pleased we're doing that. It's what they ask us to do.
But don't you agree that the EU could not move without the signature from the US in this area?
We have a mature partnership, but I'm telling you, they don't always do what we tell them to do, and it's better for it. Sometimes we differ.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is there any more questions?
There's only one. Very short.
A question, please.
So it is for
Yes, of course.
American representative.
The others haven't spoken yet.
Yes. Look, the ambassador of
El Salvador.
He mentioned the visit of President Obama to Costa Rica. And the visit was okay, very welcome, as usual. Obama visited Chile, visited Brazil. In the just a little bit far away of the European Union, just a note about this. And this visit of Obama were great expectation about the relation between USA and Latin America in general. And I know Obama was very conscious about the change of approach to Latin America after the last 5 or 6, 7 years, So, but I was reading an article last night about a very expert in Latin America in Washington saying that the visit of Obama is okay, but there's still something missing in the visit there. Because Obama promised to Latin America. Sorry?
The question.
Yeah, the question then is visit Obama relation with Latin America, maybe you are going to talk about this, is considering the reivindication, shall we say, of the Spanish or Latin living in USA, the formalized definitely, because in this program he said that to get the Spanish vote, the recognition of the normal citizen for the Spanish family who had sons who had been born in USA. So he didn't mention nothing about.
It is slightly, as you suspect, outside the remit of the conference, but if the Council would like to say a word about it, please feel free to do so.
Just a word to say that the immigration policy is one area where U.S. Congress and the administration are actually seeing eye to eye. We are both determined to make progress, which has been too slow coming, on reform our immigration laws. I think you're going to see progress in that area.
Thank you very much. I'm going now to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Werner Macias Romeo, the Ambassador of El Salvador to the Court of St. James's. Just as a means of introduction, His Excellency has been here since September 1st, 2009. We don't always like to remind ambassadors of the length of their tour of duty, unless it is at the beginning.
Maybe you remind me that it's time to leave.
Absolutely not. But before this, prior to this, he was Director General for Foreign Policy at the Foreign Affairs Ministry of El Salvador, which sets the scene for the talk, the intervention that we're going to hear from His Excellency about EU relations with Central America.
Thank you.
If you please, Your Excellency.
Thank you, and I'm mindful that we're the last panel, so I'll try to be brief and I'll try to be provocative, I guess, but I have a lot of data to share with you. And thank you again for having me here. It's great to come to the forum, and it's great that I'm able to talk about the relations between the EU and Central America. And indeed, in my previous capacity, I was lucky enough to be part of the team that negotiated an association agreement with the EU. And before, I was lucky enough also to be part of the effort to bring to ratification and approval in the U.S. Congress our dear DR-CAFTA, you know, which is basically the trade agreement that the region has with the U.S., and it's proven to be a very, very fruitful one. So we Central Americans are the first region in the world to sign a regional association agreement with the EU, and we feel very proud of that fact. It's coming into effect, hopefully this year. We'll talk a little bit about that, where different stages are. And it is exactly 7 years ago that Europe and Central America agreed to negotiate this association agreement. And we made that commitment to each other at the summit meeting of the European, Latin American, and Caribbean leaders in Vienna in 2006. I mean, people often say that nothing really good comes out of this summit. You know, it's just a bunch of officials sitting together, leaders, and just working on a declaration that it's never implemented in the end. But I guess there was a silver lining in the case of the Vienna summit, because we engaged in a negotiation with the Europeans, and we produce indeed an agreement that is a real milestone for us and for Europe. So with that context, allow me to talk a little bit about where we are, what we have, and when we see the relationship going. As I was mentioning to you, the European Union and Central America have a comprehensive relation that covers much than trade. And to the surprise of a lot, it dates back to 3 decades ago. I mean, the EU started engaging with the region with a mechanism that we call the San Jose Dialogue that was launched in 1984, and that it's truly the cornerstone of the EU-Central American relations. And before continuing, I know that there is a representative from the Embassy of Panama, so I want to acknowledge that this is an agreement of several countries, and I'm going to take the regional perspective, but I'm going to, at the end, talk a little bit about how El Salvador sees it, you know, from an individual country perspective. And the objective of these dialogues that we established in San Jose, which basically got together officials every year, once in the region in Central America, and the next year in Europe, and so we rotated, and we had a very, very fruitful exchange, was initially to find solutions to the armed conflict by means of negotiation. Remember, the 80s was a very tough time for Central America, and the EU was there to accompany us in the negotiation process. Since then, the EU has made a significant contribution to peace and democratization processes and social-economic development in Central America. Before getting into the agreement, we were very lucky to negotiate 2 agreements that are the precursors of the association agreement. In 1993, the EU-Central American Framework Cooperation Agreement, which basically sets the tone for most of the cooperation now arriving into the region, and then the Political Dialogue and Cooperation Agreement that we signed in 2003 that basically got superseded by the association agreement later on. Then we got to the Central American Association Agreement. As I mentioned to you, in May 2006, Central America and the EU agreed to begin negotiations in Vienna. In 2007, in June, Central America and the EU officially sat down in Brussels and launched the negotiations, which unusually took a longer time. We thought that it was going to be easier. We had already sat down with the Americans, and we were just very, very optimistic about getting the ball rolling. But in this time, you know, we were not negotiating with one country, but with 27 countries, and the process was a little bit slower. But in the end, in May 2010, negotiations were concluded, and we were able to initial an agreement in Madrid. The agreement was signed last year, in June 2012, among the leaders and the European representatives in Tegucigalpa. And right now, it's in the process of ratification in some of the countries because the parliament, as you will see later on, European Parliament has already ratified it. The Central American EU Association Agreement, sort of like, it's a broader take. It's a very, very state-of-the-art agreement. It was the first experience that the Central Americans had in this field, and it encompasses three main pillars: the political dialogue, cooperation, and also the trade component, which is basically a free trade agreement. We're creating a region-to-region free trade area. The parties to this agreement on the side of the Central Americans are Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. And then, on the other hand, we have the 27 European Union member states. This is very important to know because in the maze of free trade agreements that Central America has, which includes, of course, the one with the U.S., not all the time we're all together. With the agreement with the U.S., the DR, the Dominican Republic, which is part of our broader integration system, is part of that agreement. But in this case, with the EU, the Dominican Republic is not there for a simple reason. They already had an engagement with the EU through CARIFORUM. So they had a different deal. So in the end, we were able to conclude the first region-to-region agreement. Very briefly, the ratification process. I guess the Europeans were the first one to realize that this was a very important agreement, and they ratified it very quickly. In December 2012, the association agreement was ratified by the European Parliament. Nicaragua and Honduras have already ratified it on our side. Guatemala, Costa Rica, and Panama have already started the process of ratification of the agreement. And El Salvador is just started it. We just started it and sent it to our legislative assembly, our Congress, for ratification this year. We expect to finalize, because there is a deadline also in the agreement, so we expect to finalize the ratification process by the end of June, July, I believe, 2013. Very briefly talking, and then perhaps we can